Hello everybody, and welcome back to a brand new video. Now this year has been kind of crazy, obviously, and it's both felt like an eternity and gone by extremely quickly. Now because of that, I want to have a look back at all of the updates that came out this year, just to do a bit of a 2020 recap. Like January, what even happened back in January, I can't even remember. So we're gonna go look through all of the blog posts this year and determine what updates came out, and maybe just have a quick look at how successful they ended up being. Anyway guys, let's get started. Now first up here, we're going to jump back to January 9th, which was the first major update of the year and also a quality of life update. Now the update was called Eating in the Bank, and essentially it increased the functionality of the bank, allowing you to both eat items while in the bank interface, as well as equip items. Now it just kind of goes to show how long it takes me to unlearn previous mechanics. Like I still don't do this even though it's been nearly a year. Funnily enough though, just in December I'm finally starting to use that functionality a bit more, and it probably was actually one of the best quality of life updates this year. Now to allow this video to be even somewhat concise, we're going to be skipping a lot of these smaller updates. Not that they're not important, just I don't think an hour-long recap of every update is going to be very interesting. Now January 23rd was a pretty big day because we both received the wiki integration update as well as the removal of Bounty Hunter. Now the wiki integration update was one of my favorite things they've changed, especially for new players. It essentially added in a bunch of different ways for you to search the wiki in the game client. You could right click your quest journal, your achievement diary. There's even a little search button that you could click on and then pretty much inspect any element in the game, and it would open up the relevant wiki page. Honestly, the Oldschool Runescape wiki is probably one of the best I've ever seen, so directly integrating it into the main client I think was an awesome idea. Now the second major update was the removal of Bounty Hunter. If you don't remember, Bounty Hunter was initially removed mainly to do with gold farming, botting, and the fact that Bounty Hunter could be easily abused to generate wealth. Now unfortunately today we realized that, well, that never really truly ended up getting fixed, but back in January, there was still hope. Now jumping forward to February, the first major update of the year, and that was the Nightmare of Ashihama. It happened so long ago now that I actually kind of forgot that the Nightmare was this year. February 6th of 2020, we got one of the biggest new boss releases of the year. Now in my opinion, I would say the Nightmare of Ashihama was a pretty big success. I mean, the price of the items that they drop are still extremely high. I mean, a harmonized orb is still worth over $1 billion. The initial idea was to have a really high level boss that had very rare but sought after drops that would hold value, and I think they accomplished that. Even to this day, the Nightmare is one of the highest GP per hour moneymakers in the game if you average it out over, honestly, thousands of hours. Personally, I don't have a lot of kill count at the Nightmare, but I have done it a bit, and I think it is pretty enjoyable to do either in a group or even probably solo. Also, in hindsight, the Inquisitor's armor, the harmonized orb, Eldritch orb, volatile orb, they all have their place. Okay, maybe not the Eldritch orb, but they have found somewhat of a niche for them, while not really treading on the toes of any other best in slot items. So in my opinion, that's a solid 2 thumbs up. Guess you can't see them, but whatever, let's move on. Next up here, February 20th, which is Oldschool RuneScape's 7th birthday. And no surprise here, we get a birthday event every year, but man, 7 years has gone by very quickly. I mean, 7 years ago, I had just barely graduated high school. I mean, 7 years is a long time for a game. I mean, Oldschool RuneScape has already outlived many new releases that have already come and gone. I mean, we're like the tortoise, slow and steady wins the race, everyone else is going to burn out, but RuneScape is eternal. Now moving on to March, we had a interesting temporary update called Fasani's Nightmare. Now Fasani's Nightmare was just a temporary challenge with an augmented version of the Nightmare of Ashihama. A pretty interesting idea, and I'm kind of curious if a similar thing will ever be used again on future bosses. I don't see why not. Now moving on to March 22nd, we had some temporary game worlds added due to an explosion in the RuneScape player counts. Now on its own, this update is pretty minor and probably not noteworthy, but the context surrounding it, the reasons behind why this temporary update was necessary is important, and the most talked about thing of the year by far. April, we finally got Bounty Hunter back, iteration number 3 or 4, who's keeping count at this point. Obviously there was a ton of changes to Bounty Hunter, including the removal of the mysterious emblem, the addition of blighted items, including blighted manta rays, anglerfish, karambwans, but also the ice barrage sack, bind sack, stuff like that, as well as a blighted super restore. These items would only work in the wilderness and to this day are still a bit cheaper than the regular counterparts. Now at the end of April, on the 28th, was another pretty important announcement, which may have flown under the radar for a lot of people, but Jagex as a company was sold to a new holding company. So Jagex was acquired by MacArthur Fortune Holding LLC, a global asset management company. Now at the time, I really didn't like the sound of that, but as far as I can tell, nothing really changed. And I think there was some information circling about how it was maybe even the same company, they were just restructuring their debt. But anyway, on paper, company sold. Okay, now moving on to June, which is probably one of the biggest months for updates in 2020. First up here, we got the Darkmeyer update, which was my favorite update of the year for a bunch of different reasons. We got the Hallowed Sepulchre, the new Fire Lords, Fire Ladies, Firewatch Sentinels, the Dayalt Essence Mine, an entirely new quest, the Sins of the Father, and really just the whole city of Darkmeyer was well fleshed out and is a really cool location. Now the Hallowed Sepulchre I think is probably the best update of the year, because it finally set a precedent that skilling can be challenging, can provide good rewards and good experience while not being overtuned. I think the Hallowed Sepulchre found a perfect balance. It's still an incredibly good moneymaker, but honestly to master is probably just as hard as learning Zulrah, if not harder, and would require much more focus. The Sins of the Father was a great quest with some really interesting rewards. I can't say that I've tried much Dayalt Essence mining, but as far as I'm aware it's like 90% or 95% efficient, which means if you want to do a little extra mining versus rune crafting, it's not a bad idea. And to top it all off, thieving Fire Lords and Fire Ladies is one of the best moneymakers for thieving. Actually, I think it is the best moneymaker. And killing Firewatch Sentinels is also a pretty good Slayer task. So altogether, my favorite update of the year and I think a huge success. Now also in June, we got probably one of the biggest integrity changes of the year, and that was the changes to the death system. Now with it introduced the new gravestone system, along with the death coffer and death's office. Now the whole idea around it was to make dying a little bit more punishing, but not so punishing that you quit the game. Now looking back at the year, how many times have I personally died? I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 times. It's not that punishing. Also, I've never once not made it back to my gravestone, and you have to die in a pretty spectacular manner to not make it back there in 15 minutes. Also, depending on the gear that you were bringing, sometimes you risk almost nothing. So overall, I don't think the death rework was that punishing, and I'm kind of curious to know how much gold it has taken out of the game. I'd like to get an update on that sometime. Maybe we'll get that next year. Okay, moving on to July, we got another PvP update, which is called Ferox's Enclave. The Ferox's Enclave update added in a new wilderness hub, which also redirected the new Clan Wars teleport here. Now obviously I don't PvP, so I don't really have the authority to say whether or not this update was good or bad, but from my viewpoint it was an interesting idea, but maybe the execution wasn't perfect, although I'm not sure if anyone is ever going to be 100% happy with pretty much any PvP update. Now speaking of PvP, in August of 2020 we also got more updates. Now on top of the PvP changes, another big update that happened there was finally some nerfs to the Revenant Caves. They'd probably been one of the most talked about problems of the year. And finally in that update, the loot of the Revenants were decreased by around 20%. The Bracelet of Ethereum was also nerfed. All of this was an attempt to reduce the effectiveness of clans. Now moving on to the end of August, we got one of the more quaint updates of the year. Now that was Mahogany Homes. Essentially, it added in a alternative construction training method, which instead of rebuilding and destroying your house constantly, which must be pretty demotivating, you could run around Gielinor and help repair other people's homes. Now I tried Mahogany Homes on the release date, messed around with them for a bit, and then pretty much immediately dropped it. Now I'm sure it's probably pretty appealing to players that don't have a lot of money to blow in construction, which is totally understandable. For me though, the experience rates being 4 or 5 times less was a bit of a deterrent. That said though, I think the rewards are good. I mean, an equipable saw, it doesn't get much better than that. So I think it was a reasonably successful update. Now moving on to September, we have a port sign of interest. Funnily enough, I just literally did this quest like 2 days ago. A beginner level quest whose whole point was to introduce new players to the Slayer skill. I think it accomplished its goal fairly well. I just did it the other day, so it's fresh in my mind. I think the Porcine Pest offers a pretty enticing low-level Slayer monster. Also additionally with this quest, a new Slayer Master was put into Draenor Village called Spira, who essentially is the same as Turiel, but just closer to Lumbridge. Now October 21st was a pretty big day. Not only did we get the Halloween event, but also some very long awaited changes to the Revenant Cave. The Revenants were redistributed throughout the cave, spread out quite far. Multi-way combat was removed and replaced with something called Singles Plus. They added a PJ timer. They added in an entrance fee of 100,000 coins to get in there, along with a few other minor changes. But it did accomplish its goal. Nobody really goes there, and clans are no more. Now after that, no major updates came to the main game for a while, but on October 28th, we got the Trailblazer League release. Now Trailblazer was wildly successful. A ton of players went to go play it. I really didn't imagine that the second league would be that popular, but I think by far it was much more played than the first one. The league is still running now for a couple more weeks and will end January 6th. In the end, I didn't really play Trailblazer that much. I tried it out, it was a lot of fun. If I had a bit more time, I probably would have continued playing it, but I mean, I had to progress my main account, and in the end, I'm pretty happy with my decision. Okay, moving on to the end of November, we got a new quest, one again I just did yesterday, called Twisted Tales Getting Ahead. Another novice entry-level quest for Zaya, which involves you trying to decapitate a headless beast, lots of hijinks, funny dialogue, pretty much all you would expect from a novice level quest, notably though first of many that are going to be coming in the Twisted Tales series. So now on to the most recent updates. December 2nd, we got the settings rework, which implemented a full redesign of how the settings panel looks. I'm still kind of getting used to it, and a few features that I used most prominently are now buried a little bit further. Overall though, I think for new players especially, it's going to be a lot easier to use. The only reason I find some changes annoying is just because it's so ingrained in my head, which I think any new player probably won't have that issue. And the final major update of the year, December 9th, is the Christmas event, offering new cosmetic rewards, and overall I just really like the Christmas event. Now obviously that wasn't everything that happened this year. I probably didn't even cover half of it, but those are the major updates and things I thought were most impactful this year. Now obviously the elephant in the room, a lot of the major updates that were promised got pushed back to the next year, and that was mainly due to the virus. It is a little unfortunate because for major releases this year we only really got the Nightmare and Darkmeyer, which as I said were actually some of my favorite updates of all time, but a little sparse. But really you can't blame them, they made the best of a bad situation, and the fact that we continue to get weekly updates without stop I think is very commendable. I'm really looking forward to 2021. Looks like we have a lot of really awesome updates planned just for the first quarter, as it looks like next year will be jam-packed. Anyway guys, that is going to be it for today's video. Hope everyone here has a really good holiday. Take some time for yourself, take a break. I'm definitely going to be doing that. Now I have a pre-planned video for this Sunday, which is going to be another episode of my GE only account. After that though, there may be no new uploads until the new year, so I look forward to seeing you then. Now before I go here guys, I want to give a massive thank you to one of my newest members over on YouTube named Capi, who just subscribed at the Dragon tier of YouTube membership. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it. They're joining Zyle, James Luft, Brad Sings, Ocelot, and Kush Patel, all at the Dragon tier. We got quite a crew here now. Also, a big thank you to BirdBot and Basetitch for being subscribed at the Runite tier. As always, if you're looking for another way to support the channel, becoming a YouTube member is an awesome way to do so. You will be immortalized in my videos, get access to my video release schedule, and of course get a custom role in my Discord channel. Anyway guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.